So this week we will be doing the last part, so the last amid of the mimer of the beer, the first beer of Yanasi B'Chag V'Yasala, and then we will do the next part, will be the beginning of the next mimer, the next beer of Yanasi B'Chag V'Yasala. We're holding at the top of Yud Tes Amid Aleph, which here we have Hine Inin Kumi Lechi. And so, as we know, this Vart Lechi, as we've been speaking, it has a Kriya and a Ksiv. It's read Lach or Lecha, but it's written Lechi. And so, as the Mimer goes, I might pronounce it this way, that way, but Lamaisa, that's what this is, the Lechi. And as we said, that in order to reach, that a person should be able to draw down from Machshava Kduma, which is the Makar of Torah, etc., and to draw it down into this world, we have to have it through Torah mitzvahs. It's through first Kumi Lechi that we have to reach the place of Machshava Kduma, and we have to be totally focused on the Eibishter himself. And that's where he's holding now. In Kumi Lechi, how do we accomplish this? It's through davening, which is called the ladder. And it says that the head of the ladder reaches the heaven, what is the heaven here? The level of the chaf that we mentioned before, which is Seiv Klam, and as we mentioned before, that the chaf refers to either the double yuds, which is in Arachanatic, or the fact that it's like a kaf, and it has everything, it surrounds everything which is within the hand, v'cholu. He says the idea is that davening has within it a ray of light from the level of Shabbos. He says, what's the idea of Shabbos? Shabbos, we see that a person has an extra neshama. So yes, and what's the idea of the extra neshama? So he said, because on Shabbos there's the ascension of the Malchus, of Atzilus, in which everything that includes within Malchus, means Neshamas Yisrael, etc., that it ascends until the time of Mincha of Shabbos. It's in the place of Abba Mamish, meaning in Chachma itself. And from there it draws down, it gets revealed upon it, the level of Keser. So in other words, that's the level of Seiv Kolam, and the surrounding light and the original Machshava, which from there comes this Neshama Yisera to all, this extra Neshama to all Jewish souls that are in bodies. It means that it shines to them from their source that's in this original Machshava. So look what it says in the Mas V'Yakom Moshe Sheslat Bnei Yisrael. And that's the idea of Kumi Lechi to the level of the Chaf and the Yud, which is Chachma Ilah and Keser. The Yud would refer to Chachma Ilah and the Chaf to Keser. And that's what we're trying to reach. And that through davening, and in davening specifically, we could do it because, as we said, the davening has within it I'm going to say it again, has within the heart of Shabbos, which the idea of Shabbos is to reach this level of Lechi. And when does it happen? Shabbos Mincha, which when we get this, we get a revelation in our Neshama, which is considered like a Neshama Yisera. It's an additional revelation in our Neshama. And that's what it says in Priyat Chaim Shara Shabbos, in chapter 23. And it says, Kimi Itcha, as we say in Mincha of Shabbos, Kimi Itcha, from you is their rest, is Menuchasam. So what is Mitcha? Me Eischa, from the Chaf, which is a level of Keser, from there is the Menucha that right now. In other words, we receive Menucha down here from that level of Chaf. And that is this array of this revelation of Shabbos gets drawn every day at the time of davening. And that's why it says about davening, Kumi Lechi, that we could go back to our very essence, to the place of Machshava Kduma, from where is our source, to the level of Seiv, Kalam, etc. And through that, afterwards, you're able to have Rayasi, Yafasi, that we're able to draw down the idea of my beloved, my beautiful, that means to draw down the light from above, down here to below through Torah mitzvahs. And as we explained before, and look at what it says on the part in the Mimer of Yaakov Moshe. And that's what Moshe Rabbeinu said to the Jewish people first, the mitzvah of guarding Shabbos. And only afterwards he commanded them to make the Mishkan, which has the same idea here. That first you have Kumi Lechi, which is the idea of davening, which is the idea of keeping Shabbos, because we know Tefillah is like the Ha'ar of Shabbos. And only afterwards the level of Rayasi Yafasi, which is to draw down godliness, which happens through the Siyas HaMishkan, through the building of the Mishkan. And so this pasuk is actually said about the last Exodus, the leaving of Mitzrayim. Because then there was a revelation of the light of Eib Hashem and the Jewish people in Knesset Yisrael, which is the source of the Jewish people, as it says that Hashem Hoylech, that Hashem was going before them by day and by night in a pillar of smoke, of cloud, and then in a pillar of light of fire by night. And it's explained in Zohar that V'Hashem, that on this word V'Hashem, Zokif Time There's a pazer the tam is above it, which there explains that the Jewish people went out upright. They went out with strength. In other words, that's the reason they were able to be upright, kumi, to get up, lach, to the Eibishter. Why? Because there was this Hashem hoylech l'fneim yemam, the Eibishter was revealing to them. And so look also in Parashat B'Shalach on the Maimer of Hashem hoylech l'fneim, and that's where it says that the winter has passed and the rains have passed. That means that it's already the bad times have gone, and now it's a revelation from above. And this is the idea that why could we have during davening, that through the davening we're able to reach the Eibishter, because it's revealed to us. The Eibishter reveals to us at the time Yetzias Mitzrayim himself, and therefore there's an ability to have this kumi lechi. But in the time of exile, there's no power in Knesset Yisrael to ascend to their level of kumi lechi, to their essential source, because they've descended in such a hidden level, and it's called the Sukkah of David that is falling. And so, to this it says, and it advises an idea to how could it ascend, even when it's in the lowest and the hidden of levels. And that's through Hareini es Maraich, that you should show me your form, your picture, but it means, that we said before, in the mirror, that you should place to your heart how this entire concealment is in order. And by the way, this is on the pasuk of Yinasi b'chag ve'asala, that when we're in the cliff of the rock, which is we're hidden, we're stuck, as we mentioned before in the Maimarim. So then we have the idea Hareini es Maraich, that is, that you should think about how this concealment itself is, that there should be a reflecting and a light, in other words, a returning light, which comes specifically because of the concealment. In other words, the level of returning light is a much stronger love than you have the light that comes from just ascending kumi lechi to go to your source. Excuse me. And similar to the idea of Bali Tshuva, that a place that about Tshuva stands, even the greatest tzaddik is not able to be at that level because it's with a greater strength. In other words, the love that comes through the Tshuva is much greater than what would happen just in a regular revelation and ascension of levels. And then look also what it says in the Maimer, Vani Erev B'Soinai, on the Pasuk, Vani Erev B'Soinai in the Maimer, and which explains there well that the idea of David was saying, Kein B'Kodesh Chazi Sicha, that David HaMelech was saying that as a tzaddik, I wish that I could see you the way about Tshuva relates to you. The way about Tshuva has that love and sees the Eibishter. And from this, when we have this idea, even in the time of Golus, that we have that the idea of Hareini es Maraich, that we look at the concealment, and we recognize that concealment is only to have a greater love to Hashem. So then we'll actually draw down ki koilech arev, that not only, as we'll see in a moment, not only that you have voice, but a sweet voice. That what koilech goes on Torah, which that is a drawing down of Torah, of the Ur and Saf, that is above, down here to below, which is, as we said before, an idea of Rayasi, my beloved. I'm also my sustainer, as we said, referred to Torah. But because of the descent and the concealment of levels, that through that, there becomes this level of returning light, as we said, we draw down that this drawing down of Torah should be from an even higher level, from the level of where it's drawn down just through Kumilach Rayasi, that just through my beloved coming up to Hashem. As we said, and I look what we said before in the Maimer of the Sasi, that it could, because in Golus the descent is much lower in the days of the week, etc. Through this chariot of the horses that's mentioned in Zechariah, that through that there becomes even a greater ascent through the sus that runs higher and higher, as we mentioned in the Maimer there. And that's what it says, Kikolich Arev, which idea of Rayasi, my beloved, is that the Jewish people, as we said before, they sustain they are the sustainers. And as we know, that the Torah is called mazain, called nourishment, as we said, let's go and share, let's eat my bread together with yours, which is the idea of Torah. But what does it mean? That your voice is sweet. It's like, for example, the food that has sweetness in it, which on this it says, that there's always extra room for a more sweet food, for a dessert. In other words, it comes out that it's food that has a special sweetness, a special taste, has a exceptional level above others. In other words, there's extra room for it always. In the same way as the idea of Torah, which is called bread, that it's generally called bread, but when you bring down the revelation and of the supernal pleasure, from the source of all pleasures, as it says, Ani Seirascha Shashoti, that I'm the Torah, your pleasure, then we have not only koilech, but koilech arev, that this food, this is like, for example, even higher level, a sweet food, like a dessert, and that's what it says, the same way, umarech nava, that your your countenance is beautiful, which just refers to mitzvahs, that through tshuva, also the actions that we do become good and they shine greater. Through the idea of tshuva, we're able to have greater Torah, greater revelation of Torah than it would be naturally when it would not be in the time of Yetzias Mitzrayim, and also the mitzvahs are in a greater way than it would have been at the time of Yetzias Mitzrayim. Rather, because we're in Golus, we're able to draw and reach a much deeper point of relationship through Hareini Es Marayach, through looking backwards through the Or Chayzer and having a tshuva to the Eibishter, and that draws down a sweetness in Torah and a goodness in the actions that we do. And look at Parshas Yisro in the Maskeh of the Amrayim, and look what it says on the Maimer of Likkutei Kodesh, that there's many different levels in the levels of garments that we do through mitzvahs, that we've mentioned before. And therefore, through the idea of Hareini Es Marayach, that we see the reflection. We actually draw down that there should be garments that are made from the actions of mitzvahs are even more beautiful, which are the level of Yafasi, from the highest of levels. Okay, now we'll do the second Maimer on Yutes Amid Beis, which is another beer on the words of Yonasi B'Chag V'Yasela. So it's another beer on this Maimer of Yonasi, my dove, being in the clefts of the rock, which we spoke about as a time of Golus, when the Jewish people are stuck in a hidden place, in a concealment, and they can't flap their wings, and they can't fly, etc. So here the Maimer begins that a Chacham said that Noivlis, the drippings of Chachma, of above, is what Torah is. So Torah is, so to speak, a dripping of an example of the Chachma of above. So he says to reveal Torah is a level of a light of Chachma, which comes down into the level of the wisdom that comes down into the attributes, into the Midas, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, etc. And that is why they're also in a number of 6 orders of the Mishnah, 6 tractates of the Mishnah, which are connected to the 6 supernal Midas. As we know that there's different orders, a Seder of Zroyim is from the level of Chesed, etc. And the idea here is that we have 6 or 3 opposites of 6 things here, which is kosher, pasul, which kosher means acceptable, pasul means it's impure, it's not acceptable. We have tamei v'taher, which is pure and impure, and then we have chayiv and zakai, which is liable and guilty or innocent. And so, and it's a bit more, zakai is a bit more than innocent, it means righteous. Anyway, but these are coming from the supernal midas. In other words, that these 3, which is kasher, mutter, and tar, which are the positives here, those are the levels of chesed on the right side, which draws and embraces one, that you could lift up the thing, you could ascend, you could elevate it, that it should be able to become infused within the light of the Ein Sof. On the other hand, when we have pasul, aser, and tamei, so those are the things that are all negative, which is a level of gvura and the left side that pushes away, that it's not able to ascend. So he says that all these levels of kosher and pasul, etc., all these things are based and according to the wisdom of Hashem, that is a wise but a wisdom that we don't know. In other words, not a chachma idea that gets drawn down, it gets enclosed within what? The midas, in the godly character, in the godly emanations of the midas of Atzilus. And therefore the Torah is called the drippings of chachma of above. Why? Because the chachma, this chachma encloses within it the midas, is like a level of noivlis. It's like a drip. It's like a little drop. It's like a little example of what is in a comparison to the essence of the supernal wisdom and the Eibishter's wisdom, which is so exalted and elevated, higher and higher than the midas. And look at what it says in the Maimer Shmaim Kisi, which goes on the Yin of Torah, which he says that a chair is it's like a king that sits down, it draws him down. So on the one hand, it's drawing him down. On the other hand, so it's a chair to the level of Ratzin, to the desire and the wisdom and the understanding, and it's for this reason itself. But as it comes down, it's only a chair, it's not the thing itself. And that's why it says, by Yisrael, that they are Kodesh Yisrael, the holy, that the Jewish people are holy to the Eibishter, to Hashem, the beginning, the first of his harvest. In other words, the Jewish people, they are the source, the rashis, the head, and the source of Torah. Why? Because the Jewish people ascended in the thought. What does that mean? The meaning of thought here is from the level of Chachma, So what does it mean, alu b'machshava? They went up, in other words, they're higher in the chachma. That means at the very beginning of this thought, which that is the idea of in the beginning of thought, machshava tchila, or that says the beginning of thought. Which the idea here is that an idea of the evolved worlds that you have an emanation and an emanator. So the inner level, the pnimius of the emanator, is always, or of any level. In this case, he's meaning whatever the level is of the emanator is actually is of the cause is actually cleaving to its own cause. In other words, only the external part of a ilah. The external part is what gets drawn down to give sustenance and to give some type of revelation to its emanation, to its caused thing, to the thing that it causes. So the same way as also it gets drawn down, it gets evolved from level to level, from ilah to another ilah. Everything is only in this way, that the external level of the higher one becomes the inner level of the lower one. And the inner level of the lower one is always cleaving to the external level of the higher one. And look what it says, a little bit about this in Parsha Shlach. And he said, according to this rule, the Chachma Ilah, which receives from the level of Keser, as it says, V'achachma Ayin Tumatze, that the Chachma receives from Ayin. So this highest level of Chachma and its inner level is what? It's always cleaving to the supernal Keser. And look in Pardes Shar Shlishi, that every Sphira can be counted or looked at as 3 levels, and look in the Shar Nesivis there, that it says 1 Nesiv, which is the unification of Chachma and Keser, and therefore this is the idea of this unification of Chachma and Keser at the highest of levels, and that is where that is the inner part of Chachma connecting with Keser. Look also there that anything that's totally as mufla, that's wondrous, it looks to us as an emanator. And look in Parshas Pinchas, that what comes down from Chachma below into Midas, that is only the external part of the Chachma, and that's the idea of Noivlis Chachma, the drippings of Chachma. On the other hand, the Shamas Yisrael, they ascended into the thought itself, which is the highest level of the thought, and that is why they're called sons to Hashem. And it says, Banim Atam Hashem, by my son, my eldest son, Yisrael, that just like a son that gets drawn from the brain of the father, it's within him, it gets enclosed, the little seed of the essence and the being of the wisdom of the Chachma that's in the brain of the Father. The same way the Jewish people, the souls of the Jewish people, their source of their soul is from the very essence and inner part of Chachma Ilah itself, which is even higher than the drippings and the external part of Chachma that comes down to make Torah. And that's, look what it says in the Maimer Shishim Hema Malachis, in the meaning of that the Knesset Yisrael, that the source of the Jewish people is in the innermost part of Zah. Look there. And also look in the Maskan Yeshena, in the meaning of Alu b'machshava, they ascended in the thought, which means at the level of thought, that's within thought, look there. And if so, the same way we're also explaining here that the source of the Shamas Yisrael, they're from the highest level that's in Chachma Ilah, and therefore they're the first of Hashem's harvest. And they are the source and the foundation of Torah, which Torah itself is only the noivlis, it's only the drippings of Chachma. It's already the way that Torah has been descended. It's from the external part of Chachma. The Jewish people come from the inner part of Chachma. And that is why the Torah is called the Torah of Moshe, because the soul of Moshe, its source is in the essence of Chachma Ilah, which is the source of Torah. And that's what, as it says, explains this in the Maimer, Lavin Lachem Mishnah in Parsha Shlach. And therefore it says by Moshe that he was hard of speaking, that even with regard to the oral Torah, and also he was kvad lashon, he had a hard tongue to speak, and with regard to the written Torah, because he was unable to lower himself down, that Torah should be drawn from him, which is only a dripping of wisdom when he was from the higher level with the inner part of Chachma itself. And look also what it says, this is Likkutei Kodesh, which is the idea of Torah, which Torah is called the bride, and it's called the betrothed to the Jewish people, which the Jewish people are called the Chasan, they're called the groom, and the one that sustains and gives, and so they're the one that is higher than Torah. And so, he says now that even though this is the level of Moshe, in other words, Moshe is the one who's the essence of Chachma, the inner level of Chachma, yet he said the same it is by every single, there's also great souls that are also from the level of Moshe. And that's where it says that Safra said to Rava that he called him Moshe. He said, Moshe, you said well. Which means that there's souls that are at the level of Moshe. They're coming directly from this inner level of Chachma. Okay. He says, what does that mean? That these souls are called brothers and beloved to the Eibishter, to Hashem. Achim v'reim. As it says in the verse, L'man achai v'reim. And it's explained in Zohar that they're higher even than the level of sons, that we say that the Jewish people are sons to the Eibishter, because they come from the unification of Chachma and Bina, of Ava, of Atzilus, which that's where they're born from. And therefore they're called brothers to the level of Zah, which also comes Zo, where does it come from? Abba ve'ema, the Ava, the father and mother, so to speak, of Atzilus. And therefore they're even higher than the level of Torah, as we explained before. And also explained the Maimer of Shishim HaMalachis, that idea of the first Chassidim, as it says in the Gemara. But the Neshamas that come from this relationship of Zon Malchus of Atzilus, which means that the Neshama is drawn down from a way that it went from a thing of nothing, because Atzilus is totally nothing, being totally subdued, and all it is godliness. There's no sense of self. There's no self whatsoever. Not even a sense of self. There is no self. And so it comes from a sense of ayin to a being of yesh, which means it's coming from Atzilus to a level of creation itself, that there becomes something, but a neshama of Atzilus, that means that they're the level of the godliness of Atzilus mamish, which is Atzilus, the way it is in Atzilus, higher than the level of creation of something from nothing. They're only like the level of the vessels of Atzilus, which what are the idea of the vessels of Atzilus? That's the limitations that there are in Atzilus. In other words, it says that the height of Shir is 236,000 tens of thousands parsas. So in other words, it's a limitation. In other words, there's a limit to the light, which means, in simpler words, that in Atzilus we have a light of chesed. It's somehow limited to chesed, but it's not a created chesed, and that's the idea. And the souls they get drawn down from the kelim, so the neshama is only like a drop. One little thing in comparison to the size and the greatness of the kelim. There's no sizes there. But in comparison to the greatness of the kelim. Yet, it's a level of Elikus itself. It is the essential ingredients and being of Atzilus, and it's unchanged. And so this explains in the Maimer of this beer, on the Maimer of the Zohar, Parshas Pinchas, somewhere it says, look there. And so these are Neshamas, that they come from the unification of Abba ve'ema. They're called brothers, and they're called beloved to the Eibishter. And to who? But he says here to Zun, to the level of HaKadosh Baruch, the level of Zun, to the level of Zah Malchus of Atzilus. Why? Because they also were emanated from the level of Chachma and Bina, just as the Kalim came from Chachma and Bina of Atzilus. Only that they're a much smaller light in comparison to the vessels of Zun, which are of Zah Malchus, which are the 10 spheres as we know. Okay. On the other hand, the neshamas that they get born from the unity and the companionship, the zivug, the marrying of Zun, of in other words, Zah and Malchus of Atzilus, that means that their birth is to the world of Bria, as it explains in Eitz Chaim, or the gate of Seder Atzilus, Bria, Yitzir, and Asiyah, chapter 4 and 5. That is, that the neshama gets drawn down, that it could be a created thing from something, it became something out of nothing. And on this level that it says that it became a created being, there it says that the Jewish people have to connect with Torah, and then through Torah they connect to the Eibishter. But according to what it says in other places, that also from the unification of Zah Malchus of Atzilus, there can be born and it can be drawn down sometimes souls that are high, very high souls, which are also called neshamas of Atzilus itself, as it seems from the Zohar Parsha Vayikra, and also from the Zohar Parsha Mishpatim, and many other places. Yet, being that the source of this birth of this neshama of Atzilus is from the marriage of Zah Malchus of Atzilus, therefore they're ultimately called sons to Hashem. And therefore, they're only like one drop that comes from the brain of Zah Malchus. On the other hand, the souls that come from that are brothers to Zah, they are a drop in comparison to the Chachma of Atzilus, of Chachma and Bina. She said the Torah, which is the essence of the Chabad of Zun. In other words, the Torah, which is the essence, because with Torah we said is a dripping from Chachmilah, but it's the essence, it's the inner level of Zah Malchus of Atzilus. So there it's the essence, that's Torah, it's the essence of the Chabad of the Zah Malchus of Atzilus. It's the intellect of the Zah Malchus of Atzilus. On the other hand, the neshamas that are called sons, they are like a drop from that. They're a external, so to speak, in a way, apart from that. And for sure, the neshamas of Bria, Yitzir, and Asiyah, which are the lower levels of the neshamas, that they for sure, and therefore it says upon them that they have to connect with Torah, and then from Torah to the Eibishter. He says, yeah, even the neshamas of the Bria, Yitzir, and Asiyah itself, all their sources also, in essence, from the essence of Atzilus itself. And they also ascended in the thought of Hashem, as explained in the Pasuk El Mishpatim, with regard to Kisik Nevad Ivri. And if so, we have to understand. So what's the difference that we say, the idea that these first tzaddikim, they themselves are the neshamas of Atzilus. On the other hand, all other neshamas, which are of Biyah. But here we're saying that even the essence of a regular Jew is coming from the very essence of Allah b'machshava. He comes from the very essence of the thought of Hashem, which is higher than Torah. In other words, this neshama of Moshe, etc. And so he's going to say, and this is what we spoke about it earlier in the previous Mamarim, is that the idea is it revealed within him, or is it a makif beyond him? Is it surrounding him and above him and not internalized, that it's a revealed soul within his body? He says that the idea here is that the souls of the tzaddikim, the first tzaddikim, that means that the soul, as it's enclosed within their body, is at the level of Atzilus itself, like the neshama of the Rabbi, that he had a neshama of Atzilus, which was enclosed actually in his body down here in this world, that the way he lived and saw the world and his body acted, etc., was only in accordance with the very soul that was the essence of Atzilus, revealed somehow in this body, in this way, living here on earth. And as explains in what explains in the Garsa Kodesh, that even after this nefesh, ruach, neshama, the lower three levels of the soul, the garments of the soul, which are the ones that enclose within the thought, speech, and action of a man down here on earth in a body. So these levels of nefesh, ruach, neshama, vatzilus, and when it comes down into this world to the tzaddikim, the first tzaddikim, it's possible they never change in their very essential existence to become something from godliness, etc. They stay exactly as they were above, down here on earth, without any change. And without being not only no change, but also being undiluted. On the other hand, the other general souls of the Jewish people, tzaddikim, beinim, and also, in other words, the righteous and the middle type, all types, which are called the neshamas of Bria, Tzira, and Asiya. So that means even though the source of all souls is from Atzilus itself, but yet the soul of the source, this level, the source of the soul, as it is in Atzilus, it's not enclosed and it doesn't shine in the body at all. Only it stays, the light stays, so to speak, in Atzilus in a way of a hiddenness, and it surrounds the person on the neshama. It's called the mazle, we said in previously, and it just surrounds and it stays above the neshama as it is enclosed within the body. And the neshama that comes on into the body is a nefesh, ruach, and neshama of the levels of Bria, Tzir, Nasiya itself, and not from the level of Atzilus at all, and therefore it's called Naran of the worlds of Bria, Tzir, Nasiya itself. But the source of this soul, which is a level of Mazlayu, their mazel, and this surrounding makif, this surrounding part of the soul, it's within every single soul from the level of Allah b'machshava that it came up in the thought of Hashem, and therefore from this perspective, it says on every single Jewish soul that Kodesh Yisrael Hashem, that the Jew is holy to God, he is the beginning of his harvest, which they are ultimately, essentially the source and of Torah and its foundation, and because of the neshama as it is in the body, we have this other side of this that it says the Jewish people, they connect the Torah and through Torah to Hashem. But just a note, this would mean to say that what is our job here on earth is to reveal within ourselves, and that could be through the connection with the Rebbe, that we're able to reveal within ourselves this inner essential part that we truly are. And how do we do that? Through being connected with Hashem. So through being connected with the tzaddik, And this is almost also the idea, just going off on the idea of shlichus, that we say on the one hand, that a shliach is k'moisei da mishaleach mamish, that there's something within you that makes you exactly like him, but on the other hand, in your revealed life, you're not like him. But when you do the shlichus and you bring it out within your body, that in all your areas you do what the mishaleach wants, then you become him in revealed way also, that your body, your hand, your actions, everything you're doing is all not only associated, but becomes the Mishaleachs. And that's the idea of a connection with the Rebbe, as we spoke. He says, okay, now Beis. And so now we'll understand this idea, what he says, Kumi loch rayasi, come up to me, go up, my beloved. Which what is the idea of beloved? We said that the Jewish people, from the term of rayasi, from sustenance, that they sustain their Father in heaven. So we know, so he says, Kihine, for there is no there's no comparison with that. It's outside of the realm at all of Atzilus in comparison to Ein Sof Baruch Hu, to the Or of the light of Hashem. Even more so than there's no comparison of the worlds of Biyah to Atzilus. In other words, the change, the distance from Atzilus to God is much more, to the light of Ein Sof is much greater than from us or Biyah to Atzilus. And therefore, you have to draw down the light of the Ein Sof into Atzilus itself, as we explain in the Maimarim of Lusasasi, in the what it says that I said Olam Chesed Yibana, that in the beginning God created the world with kindness and He just made it, and based on but other words, after that we have to draw it down into the world. And on this it says that the Jewish people, they bring sustenance to their Father in heaven, that they draw down this idea of Olam Chesed Yibana, that we should build this world through Chesed, and that's what it says, that we bring sustenance to our Father in heaven. That what is Shemayim? Heaven here means Shemayim, heaven. Shemayim is the idea of fire and water, which they are the supernal midos. And their Father in heaven means something higher than these midas. The Father of the midas refers to the light of Chachma, which comes down into Zah, and that is where the level of Torah comes from. And the Jewish people, we say, through that which they ascended in this thought, which is the essence of the light of Abba, of Chachma, therefore they draw down the light of the Ein Sof, which is drawn down and enclosed within the supernal wisdom, that it should come down into the levels of the midas, into Zah, and that is the added light that we bring into the vessels of Atzilus. And that's where it says, Vasisam oisam, that you should make them. And the Chachamim said, Ki'ilu asuni, as if you made me. And so look in the Maimer Tzanur Ena, in the Madiyah Tzudechem Kedei Rochas Hashem, and that's where it says that your Panavitanu, that God shines his face with us, to us. In other words, in order that there should be drawn down the Chachmilah, which is, so to speak, the face of Hashem, into Zah, which that is the idea of Chachmas Adam Tar Panav, that the wisdom of man should shine on his face, is Itanu. It's through the Jewish people, as we said before, because we ascended in this original thought, we have the ability to draw down from that thought into the level of Zah, etc. And also the meaning of Itanu is explained on the Neshama as it is in the body itself. And that is what we said, that the Jewish people, they connect to a Torah, and through that they draw down the light of the Ein Sof, and it comes down to be lit, light, to enclose itself within Torah. And through that, when we do that, and we draw down the light of Chachma back down into Torah, through that light comes also Itanu to us, to the side of the holiness only, that we draw down. The Torah should only be something that sustains holiness and nothing else. And look where it says in another place in the Maimer Kimcham Karchaim, Baruch Hanira'ar, and also in the meaning of Hashkifa Min Hashemayim, that you should look from your holy abode from heaven and bless your nation, the Jewish people. But first, there has to be this idea of kumilach, that you have to go up to Hashem through davening, which davening, as we said, is called the ladder. And that is that we should have a cleaving of our soul in its source, that ascended in the thought of Hashem through what? Through total self-sacrifice in saying Hashem Echad in Shema, that we say Echad, one, that there's only him and nothing else, and we give ourselves away totally with Mesiras Nefesh for God. And through that we are able to draw down the light from Ein Sof Baruch Hu, which is nothing, which is Ein Arechlach, which is totally beyond our realm, and it should come down from this beyond the realm of even the Chachmilah, and we draw it down into Chachmilah, and through that we're able to make this parnasa, this sustenance for our Father in heaven, as we explained before, that then we draw it down, it gets drawn down into the midas, but it will be explained further. So he says, this idea of beloved, Rayasi, this is the drawing down the light of Ein Sof into Atzilus, and that's through Torah. In other words, into the Zah of Atzilus. When that, then they have the level of Yafasi, my beauty, my beautiful one, which that's through mitzvahs, that through that we draw it down also into the lower worlds of Bri, Yitzir, and Asiyah. And the idea here is, in other words, in order to draw down the light into the worlds of Bri, Yitzir, and Asiyah, is specifically through that the light first encloses itself within the level of Malchus of Atzilus. And look, explain the Maimer of Shir Nivanava, that the Malchus of Atzilus is an intermediary to connect the light of Atzilus with the world of Briyah, as just like the crown is the intermediary to draw down between the emanator and the emanations, and explain, as we explained there. And he says, this is also what it says, that this is also through that, the Malchus of Atzilus first has to enclose itself in a veil that there is between Atzilus and Bria, and has to break through this veil, this separation, and descend into Bria, and specifically then it's able to draw down the light into Bria Tzernasiyah. On the other hand, if not for this concealment and this a wall, so to speak, then the Bria would not be able to receive it. The light would be too great, and it would either break down the worlds, or it would totally not be accepted. And that is what the Malchus is called, the garment, as it says, Hashem put on a garment of kingship, and it says bring a garment of kingship, or that Esther put on a garment of kingship. The garments of kingship is, how does God come down into this world? Kingship gets revealed specifically through garments. And that's what says Yafasi, my beautiful, that this drawing down, that the garment of this kingship should be through mitzvahs, and it's done through mitzvahs, and therefore it's called the mitzvah of the king, as we say in all the blessings of all mitzvahs, Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech HaOlam, that we bless Hashem to draw him down to be king of the world, which is we drawing him down in mitzvahs. And that's the idea of the beautiful garments, and from this we have that the Jewish people should be what it says, Asher B'cha Spar, that God boasts about us. And that's what it's also explained in the idea, Yar Panav Itanu Sela, that through Torah and the same way through mitzvahs, which is the level of Yafasi, which is the beautiful, we're able to bring down this Asher B'cha Aspire, the Jewish people B'cha, that with you specifically I exalt and I boast. But in order to draw down this garment, it first has to be the level of kumilach, as we said before, that there's opposite of this garment that we bring down. In other words, in this veil, in this garment of kingship, which is the holy garments, which are only for holy and good things. And nullification to God is also the idea that heaven could be enclosed within garments of darkness. And it says, Al B'Shamayim Kadros. And that's what it says, similar to what it says, that Hashem will be king over the nations, which are the nations that worship idols. And we understand this through that, where it says about the world of Toyu, that it says these are the kings that were king in the land of Edom, before there was a king to the Jewish people. That means that the idea of the world of Tikkun, the world of the fixed world, that's the idea of the light enclothing itself within vessels and garments, as it says that a man should not put on the garments of a woman. It's translated le yiskan, which means fix, or means the word of Tikkun. And that's the idea that in Toyu there was 10 spheres, but they were only in little points. And in Tikkun there became from them a full body of parts, etc., which the main idea of a part, that there are garments that are there, they're levushim, they're kalim, they're vessels and garments. And through these garments and these vessels of holiness, we have this accomplishment, that we're able to receive the light properly. And also through that, we draw down the light to a proper place that it should go, and that is the idea of the garments, that they protect, that the light should be contracted, that it should only come in a way that it's meant to come. Okay, and looking at different Mamarim, it's said, but then these garments of Tikkun, that's the level of beautiful garments, of Haid V'Hadar Levashta, that he puts on garments of splendor. But in the world of Toyu, because the light wasn't in a way that enclosed itself in a actual body and within vessels, therefore it became in a way that there was no garment of kingship for the lights of Toyu that were specific in the holy levels, in the godly levels, but rather there was also foreign garments that were enclosing it. Which that is, that there was drawing down the sustenance also to external things from the supernal levels of Toyu. And that's where it says that the 7 kings of Olam HaToyu, Zayim Malachim, of the world of Toyu, that in this it says that there was these are the kings that were kings in Edom before there was a king to the Jewish people. That means that this garment of Malchus, of Kedusha, is that it affects that there should be only acceptance of the yoke of heaven. In other words, total nullification to the level of the kingship of Hashem, which is Hashem Malach Geis Lavish, which that is the true existence, and everything else, nothing other than Him. And look also, and that's what happens when you have holy garments. And look also what it says in the idea of Malchus, in the explanation of but the garment of Malchus, of the other side, that is when they take the self for themselves, and they have no nullification to Hashem. As Pari says, it's to me the Nile, and I created myself. That says in Yecheskel, and they call themselves, they call God the God of gods, meaning they call themselves God as well. They also consider themselves a being, and so this is the level of the other side, the garments that are black that could happen from the world of Toyu. But he says that once, after there already becomes this world of Tikkun in a form that it gets fixed and it gets drawn down the light in proper vessels and proper garments of the world of Tikkun, then we cause that this light of God should not spread anymore to the other side and to the idol worshippers, as we says, Melechem ba'Edom, there is no more king in Edom anymore. As we're going to say in a second, we'll stop here for this week, and we'll continue next week, the end of this mimer of Yonasi B'Chag, the beer of Yonasi B'Chag V'Yasala.